Merkel Media.
What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Look, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Daylight NBC.
Jack Marius Tac-Theratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Muammar Gaddafi.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swangles and were locked down?
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the Sears hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard.
I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. If you are watching us on Ickonic, Rockfin, Odyssey, YouTube, or now Band.video, or you're listening wherever podcasts are served, thank you so much. We certainly do appreciate your help and support. We couldn't do it without you. Thanks to Alex and Rob and the crew over at Band.video for making that happen for us as well. Couldn't do the show without our sponsors. Amazing support from the new sponsor, Helium 951, HAELAN 951.com/macro is the place to go if you want to read up on what they are doing over there. Quite impressive stuff. The product is a unique fermented soy beverage. And one of the things they say about it is, look, they don't add fillers, they don't add additives, they don't add flavoring or any other garbage that could take away from the healing properties of it. So it tastes a little on the strange side. But the benefit is, first of all, it's not that bad. You kind of get used to it. And second of all, it works as a detox because it's extremely rich in phytonutrients. Some people experience a detox the first couple days after trying it. It's not the worst thing in the world. But the benefits are amazing. You are going to have reduced inflammation, less pain, mental clarity, improved mental clarity, improved mood, all of that good stuff. Right now, for the month of January 2022, they are running a little extra bonus. If you go to the store and spend more than $100, they will send you a free vitamin C bottle, so, plant-based vitamin C bottle. So take it. And shipping is free for any orders over $100. So my suggestion on something like this, since it's a relatively new product to the show, and it's kind of a product that you might not have heard about too much, fermented soy drinks are not necessarily sweeping Starbucks or anything like that. So do this. Go to the website landing page that they built for us, which is Helium951.com /macro, HAELAN 951.com /macro. And in this page, you're going to be able to watch a couple videos. You'll be able to read all about it. You'll be able to read testimonials from doctors, from clients, people that have been taking this stuff for a while. I'm going to tell you where to go to read about it and understand it. The rest is kind of up to you. These guys are making an outstanding product. So take a look at it, see if you think it's a fit. If it is, use the promo code MACRO to save yourself some money. And I would say if you are, here, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, we're in the cold and flu season, don't you know? I think, does the cold and flu season still exist, or is it only COVID season? I forget. But anyway, since it's that time of year, now's the time to really start to enhance your immune system and do what's best for your health. So take a look. I'm going to put the link in the description below so that you can have a quick way to get there. But in case you are interested, Helium951.com/macro, and also to True Hemp Science. We really love them. They're a small business based in Austin, Texas. They are making the best hemp-based CBD out there. My shoulder's working fine. I'm so happy. I could put my shoulder above my head and not feel like I'm going to die or that somebody's sticking a knife in me. That's a benefit. I've been taking the number 19 and I've been taking the number 41. They numbered all of their products. There's a ton of products in there. If you want oils, like little tinctures, that's what I've got. My morning routine is this. C60 Purple Power is right on my counter in my bathroom with a spoon there. And then right next to that is an assortment of products from True Hemp Science. And in the morning, it's a spoon of C60 Purple Power. It's a couple drops of the 19 and the 41. And I'm ready to go. Here's the thing though. I would suggest not taking this late at night or in the evening because there's an added benefit, gives you a little bit of energy. So do this stuff in the morning. Take these things in the morning. They'll get you kind of up and running and going. So if you are interested, you can go to truehempscience.com/macroaggressions and read up about that there too. This is education. We're doing a lot of education on these products, but I think that it's important for you to understand what you're putting in your body before you put it in your body, considering a bulk of the content that we've been talking about here on the show has to do with people that are just willing to inject things into their body that they haven't researched. I think it would behoove all of us to research the things before you put them in your body, even if they're coming from my sponsors, especially if they're coming from my sponsors. Double check them just to make sure. I think I've got good ones, but you never know. So if you are interested, you can go to truehempscience.com/macroaggressions, see if it's right for you. Well, this is the intro for a Swapcast, so I'm going to give you a little rundown of what we're talking about. We've got Rich Willet back on the show. He is he's David Icke's director. He directs most of the shows that David is involved in and things like that. He is a podcast producer as well. He's got a show with Gareth Icke called WTAF that you can find on Ickonic. Actually, you can find it wherever podcasts are served. He's also the host of Glitch in the Code and a really, really good dude. You know, when he's not doing all that, he's directing his own documentaries. And of course, we have Ricky Varandas as well in this three-way, I guess, alt media conspiratorial three-way that we're having, which sounds fucking repulsive, but I assure you that the episode is way better than my description of it. Ricky Varandas, the host of the Ripple Effect podcast and also my co-host with the Union of the Unwanted. So we get into it, man. It's a wild episode, so check it out, and I will talk to you soon.
Charlie Robinson.
But in England, that's typical because there's no sun there.
There's no sunlight. Yeah, really? not even in your television camera lights. They adjust for the lack of sunlight to make you
exactly. Yeah, that's because why we're also depressed and like don't really want to be here because we get no sunlight and it's free. It's winter now, and we're see through. Basically, we're see through people. We're just.
My Japanese buddy, every time he would go back, he lived in Newport Beach, but every time he'd go back to Tokyo, he'd say, "Man, I come back home and I'm green."
yeah, we are. We're just green, and they're like they don't know. So you don't know if anyone's got liver disease in the UK because you're just all yellowy green anyway. So
yeah,
and most people have because they've drunk themselves stupid. So you wouldn't know.
It's true.
Yeah.
The hooligans and, you know, if you could walk in the wrong bar. That's the thing. Yeah. Like me being a big, so Premier League and the Portuguese League are that's like, I'm a diehard. I watch both of those religiously. I'm actually missing the Man U game right now to hang out with you guys. So
sorry about that.
40 minutes.
All right. It's all right. I just obviously, you know, I DVR them. I'll watch them later, but, it's weird. Like I've always wanted to go to England because like I've always been attracted. I love the cars. Like I've always been a big Jaguar fan. I'm on my second Jaguar now. I just always loved the British styling of their cars. I've loved British music. Like Iron Maiden was one of my favorite metal bands growing up. My son's first metal concert was Iron Maiden in 2019. He went there when he was, I don't know, 4 or 5, however. Yeah, it was wild. It was really cool. And then I've always been attracted to like the music, like Low Key's from the UK. He's kind of like a political rapper. The Architects, a great metal band from the UK. I've just like always been like attracted. Obviously I'm a big soccer fan. I'm a Tottenham fan. That's
same here. Yeah.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, you Spurs. Let's go. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, they're playing tomorrow. They're actually under Antonio Conte. They're actually doing all right. Being Portuguese, I was kind of disappointed with how they sacked Nuno, but I'm obviously they knew what they're doing because Antonio's got those guys playing hard. So I'm a big Harry Kane fan. He's when he was killing it for the English national team, I'm like, dude, this guy is so awesome. And he's just a natural scorer. And then I'm like, who does he play for? He plays for Tottenham. I'm like, let me start following these guys. And I just kind of fell in love. So since Harry Kane's been there, I've been a Tottenham fan. So I'm a little late to the party, but I was on board when they played Liverpool in the finals, in the Champions League finals. And that was fun. That was a good era. But then it's been a lot of ups and downs. But that's what makes sports fun. I mean, the nice thing about this is the thing, and we'll get right into this shit, and because we might as well just keep talking. That's what I think everybody's been so pissed about sports is that when 2020 happened and sports finally got going again, even without fans, so many people looked for it for an outlet, right? We went like, finally, I get something besides news, the fear mongering that's coming from the news. Like I finally get something else to watch where I can kind of unplug, detach, or whatever. And then sports became political, and it's like, oh my God, now it's like, you in the NBA was like the worst. They had all the slogans on the jerseys, and like every player apparently now had a well thought out opinion about what was going on in the world. I'm like, and it's like, like, do you even pay attention to this shit? Like, do you even know what you're talking about? And but it was so obvious that it was and honestly, like, I'm not one of those people, and I'd love to get your guys' input, like your opinions on athletes having a opinion. Like what is your opinion on athletes having an opinion? Are you guys for that, against it? Do you not care? Do you think they have the right to also, I guess, state their perspectives? How do you guys feel about that? Because I know some people get pissed off about it.
I can answer this from a place, surprisingly, and maybe the first time I can answer this from a place of expertise as a co-owner of a sports media training company, have been since 2000. That gets pro athletes ready to interact with the media. Now, these days, it's normal. Like, of course, this is going on. But I'm sitting in the NBA's office on Fifth Avenue trying to explain to Brian McIntyre, the vice president of communication for the NBA, that they need. I'm trying to explain to him the concept of media training. He had no idea what I was even talking about. The fact that maybe your athletes that keep getting microphones put in front of their face should be as prepared for that as they are to shoot free throws. Blank look on his face. Had no fucking idea what I was talking about. And so we started working with Pete Sampras. That was our first client, one of the best tennis players ever. Mm-hmm. We've gone on to have, I mean, I can't even remember all the first round picks we have. I mean, it's easier to just say the number of number one overall picks in NFL, hockey, basketball. We've got our client list is massive. And I would sit down with these guys and try to explain to them like what the situation with the media actually is. This is part of the reason why I hate the media so much. In all of my macroaggression stuff, I'm just massively against the mainstream media. And part of that comes from watching what they'll do to these young athletes that don't know any better. They'll lure you in with this false sense of, hey, we're just buddies and everything. I mean, the first comment I would make to these guys is nothing is off the record. Just understand These guys in the media are not your friends. Nothing is off the record. If you talk shit about one of your coaches or one of your players to one of these guys in the media and it's off the record, it's on the record. It's going to be talked about. So I think that these guys, listen, they have opinions. Some of them are really smart. Like the common denominator that we had for our clients was that most of them, not every one of them, obviously, but the vast majority of them were smart enough to know that they didn't know it all, and they were working towards being smarter. So like we had the guys that we had as clients were the guys that didn't need it all that much, but wanted to be excellent at it. And the guys that needed it, like Shaquille O'Neal, I'm talking to his agent. I'm going, Leonard, we got to get like Shaq on the program. And he's like, I know he won't do it. He thinks he's great on camera. I'm like, he mumbles. And he's like, I know. So you've got like the media is, it's a double-edged sword with these guys. You play the game right, and they can take you to Ronaldo type levels, right? Where you're an international, known everywhere in the world because of the media. You fuck up though, you'll be known everywhere because of the media too. So you have to be very careful. These guys that start to wade into politics and start talking about that, man, my advice to them would be don't, because anything you say can and will be used against you by the press. If you want to talk sports, talk sports. If you want to get, if you want to develop personal relationships with the reporters, that's fine. I would come in and I would lay out pictures of all these guys. I'd say, this is this guy, this is this person, this is who they work for. This is where they were. This guy's cool. This guy's cool. This guy's a dick. Watch out for this lady. She seems nice, but so you have to prepare these guys for what they're going to go through. When it comes to politics, first of all, Michael Jordan once said it when they asked him, why are you so like, why don't you come out and talk shit about Republicans? And his response was, because Republicans buy sneakers too. And so you have to be very careful if you're merchandising yourself as a professional athlete, meaning you've got shoe deals, you've got merchandise deals, you've got likeness deals, you get all these things. You have to be very careful that you don't step on a political landmine and blow up your own merchandising deals too. So there's money involved in this too. The best advice I can give these guys would be don't talk about any of this stuff, especially to the press and especially on social media. And mind you, when I was running this company with my partner, this was pre-social media. And so I didn't ever talk to the guys about the social media stuff because I was gone from the company at that point. But the same goes for anything I say about politics. Same goes for social media. Just like it's a double-edged sword. You get a lot of followers that you can monetize that. You can make them buy your shoes and all that stuff. You say one wrong thing, you've got 80 million people calling you a dickhead. So they have to be very careful.
Yeah, we got it in the UK. The funny thing is, the probably the most famous conspiracy theorist on our planet was a former goalkeeper of a very well known goalkeeper, and he also hosted the main sports and football and snooker show in the world at the time. Obviously, it was centered around the UK. So snooker's probably the biggest in the UK. Football, obviously, at the time. 90s, late 80s. So David Icke was a goalkeeper. He was from the sports background and then in the media. So it's bizarre he's come from that to being probably the most well-known conspiracy theorist on the planet at the moment, or infamous. And so that's strange. And also we're having now obviously all of these players dropping another one, 30-year-old lad, I think it was 33-year-old or 30-year-old lad, dropped dead today in I don't know where it was. I actually just posted this on David's website. And so we're having all these people keeling over on the football pitch and other sports. And then Trevor Sinclair used to be a footballer here. He came out and spoke out against it. People are trying to speak out against it and they're getting absolutely rammed left, right, and centre by the mainstream media whilst working within the mainstream media. So they're getting pulled down, but I think it's getting to desperate measures now where they're just thinking, I don't really care now. So we're seeing that fall down here. We get people like Gary Lineker, who most people would know. He's a very well-known sports presenter. He presents our match of the day, England star a legend, but he's let himself down massively. And he's very, very much on the mainstream, very, very much talking along these lines, but he will know deep down that there's something desperately wrong here. So it's whether he finds the courage. And the thing I'm most disappointed about Gary Lineker is that his son was incredibly ill. I was in hospital at Great Ormond Street at the same time his son was, when I was about 10. But his son was in, and I think it was with, I don't know whether it was leukemia or cancer or something along those lines. And you feel like he should know better than to just jump on these things when the kids start getting involved. So they're starting to speak out. All of that Black Lives Matter stuff, the kneeling stuff, faded out in the summer of last year, phased out. I don't know whether they do it anymore. I haven't seen them. Maybe they do. But that stuff was insane. That was ridiculous. A lot of them refused to do it. But again, you've seen they're trying to merge everything. And then during all of this, that was our bread and circuses, wasn't it? Our sport. And they just took that away from us, which was a bit of a dumb move, really, because if you're going to take everything away from us, then we're going to start turning on the people that take it away from us. That just gives me a sign of these people that are doing this stuff aren't particularly bright, and their days are numbered, I believe. I don't know what you guys think, how it is where you are, but in the UK, I call it Screwball Scramble. There really are a bunch of nut jobs desperately trying to hold on to this at the moment.
One thing I loved was when during the height of lockdown, they weren't letting fans in the stadiums yet for the Premier League games. And this was after the Super League whole debacle thing. And the Man U fans, this is like during the lockdown. They're like, I know you're not going to let us in, but fuck it, we're going in anyways. And they went into the stadium to protest. And there was like hundreds of Man U fans in the stadium, a stadium that didn't have fans for months because of the lockdown. And football was bigger than whatever, danger that the government was telling them that they would be in if they gathered. And it's funny because I've always looked at like sports as one of those things as like, oh, it's kind of like meaningless entertainment, right? Like playing it and stuff. There's definitely some, as kids growing up, there's benefits. You learn how to be a good teammate. You learn how to get along with others, all that stuff, and hard work pays off, and all those life lessons. But then as an adult, you're like, oh, there's all this real crazy stuff going on all over the world. There's history. There's all this stuff that is it seemed like it's a better just time spent looking into that than watching sports. But then you start appreciating it. Like, okay, you need to disconnect from time to time. And then I always had these like second thoughts about fanatics, like the fans, you in the UK, you would hear about it. Like, you don't go into this bar with an Arsenal jersey. You don't go into that, a bar with whatever jersey. And, but I almost feel like it's those fanatics that might, the people who think that like sports are more important than anything, they're the ones who can kind of get rid of the illusion that we're in a pandemic. Because in the UK, I remember I did a show years ago on sports conspiracies with Brian Toohey, and I think I had somebody else on the show at the time too. And we were talking about a little bit about football and how in the UK specifically, like politicians know not to fuck with the Premier League because it's bad for politics. Like you don't want fans of the Premier League to turn on you. So sometimes when there's scandals or corruption, they might not be outspoken about it or say anything about it because they want to be neutral on that stuff. And I'm like, well, that's kind of what we need. Like we almost need sports to be bigger than anything, like the Super Bowl was in the US, to kind of make people think like, wait, how the hell are they letting all these people gather? And there's not local hospitals filling up. There wasn't a huge story about all the deaths that were caused by this huge Super Bowl gathering, this huge event. And you almost need people who are willing to take those steps, and really disregard any fear or danger because they're like, no, we have to get sports back. And so in a way, I almost think like those fanatics, it's a good thing. I mean, look what Dana White did, where he's like, I don't fuck the pandemic. I want to get the UFC up and going again. And he's just, he was the first one to say, he's like, listen, we can't be locked up forever. We need to get our, these things going. I'm like, in a way, you're like, oh, there's things more important than sports. But in another way, it's like, if you need somebody if you're looking for someone who is willing to risk, public backlash, you need somebody who is that ballsy and cares only about getting his product back on TV. So it's I think there's pros and cons to it. In regards to athletes having opinions, do you guys feel like it's, because I know, Charlie, you were saying it's obviously bad for your own career if you piss people off, and like you said, people always want Michael Jordan to use his voice for good, but if a guy's not politically aware of what's going on, or he just cares about basketball, I don't have anything against somebody who's like that. He's great because his obsession isn't geopolitics or current events. His obsession is basketball, and just because he has a power of a voice doesn't mean he would use it correctly if he hasn't been aware of what the hell's going on in the world, because he's been obsessed with the sport. But I do think like somebody like Kyrie Irving, who, and others who's been outspoken, like I'm glad that some people do use their voice for good, and to I guess share opinions and share their perspectives on the world, because you do have a lot of followers and you are a influencer. But I think that you shouldn't be outspoken just because you have a lot of followers. You should be outspoken because you have a well thought out opinion and perspective, and you actually have something interesting to share. What do you guys think? Do you think that athletes, just because they're athletes, they should shut their mouths? Or, because Charlie, that's interesting. You're like, I know it's bad for the career, but because of that, do you still think like if you have something that could be beneficial to say, something where you could influence a young crowd who looks up to this person, should they use that? Or do you think like, well, fuck it, for your career you shouldn't say anything, and or should you say, are some things bigger than your career, right? Like,
it depends on your level of understanding of what you're talking about. So like when Jonathan Isaac from the Orlando Magic came out talking about the anti-vaccine thing, and he sat there at that press conference very calmly and rationally unpacked the vaccine debate in a way that made perfect sense, was logical, anchored in actual science, not bullshit science. And he calmly and rationally laid that argument out. It was genius. It was brilliant. Kyrie Irving wants to be involved in social changes more so than he wants to be involved in social changes, and his basketball career allows him the platform to do that. So I can see some of these guys going off and having impactful careers off of the court because their interests are much more than just sports, and I love that and I encourage that. But they know, or they will know, Kyrie knows for sure, that when you have an unpopular opinion in today's hyper-polarized media landscape and you go against the established narrative, you will be attacked. So look, I am free speech. I am speak your mind. I want all of those things for everybody, not just professional athletes or just podcasters or whatever, but I it's important for them to know the deal before they start going down that path, because the minute you do that, you put a target on your head. It's like you're going to have half of, well, I don't know half, but you're going to have a segment of the audience hate you automatically, because you are saying something that goes against their, like if they're pro-COVID, wearing 2 masks, triple vaxxed and ready for another booster, and Jonathan Isaac comes out and lays out that argument in a calm, rational thing, they're going to call him an anti-science, conspiracy theorist, anti-vaxxer, and an idiot, and they're going to hate him and boo him forever, for as long as they remember him, just because of that, because they're not on that team. So guys like that, they speak your mind, but just know that there are strings attached. And when it comes to, like, it's one thing for us to say, we could lose our Twitter channel, or, our YouTube channels, or our Twitter accounts, and all these things. These guys can lose a lot of money doing this. There's a huge financial component to it. So I can understand the incentivization for these guys to keep their mouth shut during their playing career, because nothing good comes from talking out and putting a big target on your back. But if you're somebody that's real thoughtful, like Kyrie Irving is, I mean, you can disagree with him for sure, but he's thinking about this. I know people go, well, he's the flat earth guy and everything. Look, he's examining established narratives and established truths, and he's checking them again to see if they're actually true. So I like that. Even, you know, I'm not on the flat earth team, but I like people checking everything to make sure. So I like that, but don't pretend for a second that people are going to forget that he's the flat earth guy. And then when he has something to say that's rational and logical and maybe a little bit more anchored in facts, like the vaccine thing, they're going to drag that flat earth thing and throw it in your face. So you have to be aware of that too. So it's like, I want the guys to talk out, provided that they know what they're talking about and provided that they understand fully that they will be ganged up on by the mainstream media because they expose a huge flaw in the media narrative, and they can't have that. So that they'll try to do is just shut you up instead. So just know the consequences. That's all.
Yeah. I remember the most classic one would be Muhammad Ali, wouldn't it? Where he spoke about, I'm not going to go to war.
Yeah.
And this was at a time when that was incredibly unpopular. And he was probably the most famous person on the planet at the time.
Yeah.
And that's why he became a legend. And people seem to think it was his boxing that became that he was a legend for. It wasn't just the boxing, and that was a really small part of it. He probably would have been a very, very famous boxer, but it was not going to war and standing up for his principles, and he lost everything. And there was a time when he had to go and do speaking tours. He even did theatre tours, and he had no money. And some of his people that he beat, they came along, and some of the opponents that he actually beat and he was friends with gave him money at a time when he didn't. Eventually, after a long period, he got his boxing license back. Missed his whole his prime. He completely missed his prime, but then he won the world championship back twice after that, I believe. That's what made him a legend, because he goes, oh, fuck you, I ain't doing it. I'm not going. You take everything away from me. I'm not going, and I'll come back and I'll win it back. That's give me goosebumps. That's what's made him a legend. That's what made David Icke a legend, not because he stuck with it for so long. I don't agree with everything David says. I don't have to. That's not, you're not supposed to. But sticking with something and being brave enough to go, no, I'm not doing that's wrong. And this is what I think Ricky was pertaining to earlier. That's my big word that I've learned recently. You were talking about that heart of the British, the English football fan that had that tribal, I'm going to fight for this. It doesn't really mean much, but it means a lot for me. And that's where I'm going to put my heart in. And that's been beaten out of men specifically. And in the UK, and they've banded these people up as football hooligans and that. And you're taking a small percent of people that are. But actually, most of it was fire and pride and being able to take your kid to the game and get involved in something tribal. And that's what they've turned this tribalism against us. And now you've got the unvaxxed and the vaxxed, and they're trying to just clack these together. But the unvaxxed, this is what the people that haven't taken this and haven't taken any are the ones with the courage and the bravery right now to go, fuck you, no, fuck you, no, fuck you, no, I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it, I'm doing it. They're the Muhammad Alis of today, because eventually I believe we'll be proven right. I know we'll be proven right. This is the way it goes every single time. Every single time. The downtrodden, the ones that prove mad, you're an idiot, you're a weirdo. Time always just defeats that. And you guys know that. I know you guys know that. That's where the bravery comes. You stand in the headwinds and you go, I'm not doing it. It's wrong. I'm not doing it. I'm not setting my kids up to have a vaccine they don't want, to have something in their body that they don't want in the future. I'm not going to be part of that. Do what you like. Call me what you like. Sticks and stones, mate. And that's names. I don't care what you call me. Where did that actually start matter to grown men and grown women? You didn't care. Left that thing you left that in the playground. Call me what you like. Put whatever label you want on me you like. I'm still not doing it. And I think that's what you were talking about, Ricky, that heart of these people to go, I believe this is right. And Muhammad Ali, I think, epitomized that when he did that for me. That's what made him a legend. And later on in life, when he had Parkinson's and he lost everything that he really was, and it went in the shell, and that became kind of like this even more of a fight. That was his big fight of his life. But he stood up for what he believed in, and he didn't do it. And then he came back. And I do believe that that's what we'll see. And it's easy I think what we've done as conspiracy theorists, and that's what I would classify myself as a video producer, filmmaker, but I'm a conspiracy theorist, is that we've been right about these things for a very, very long time when everyone's telling us an idiot. And actually, oh dear, now they've got microchips in kids for COVID in Sweden. Oh, they didn't say that a year ago. We were idiots for that. How many idiot things have been ticked off the list before you go, there's no more idiot things on the list? And that's what the headwind that we've had to sit through for the last probably 10 years of doing this. And we will have to continue, but we are being proven right bit by bit by bit. The great thing is that we have had all of this stuff that these guys are afraid to do. We took it at the start and just went, okay, you're going to call me an idiot. Now that doesn't matter. You can't get any more insults. We've had this for 10 years. This ain't new for us. So we can't really lose in this because we just stick to our principles. Because we've already had all the rubbish and all the people telling us we're idiots and telling us we're insane and telling us we're weird. And we keep getting proven right. And not in every single thing and in exactly how we say it, but the overall scope of what we're talking about is usually pretty close. And we're telling you people you're going to end up like they are in various parts of China. It's going to be a technocracy. This is what's happening. We'll tell you again and again. And it might not be when we're alive, but it will be somewhere down the line that our kids will talk about. Dad used to speak about that. Granddad used to talk about these weird things. Look where we are now. That's what you live for. That's what makes you a legend. That's what keeps you alive. It's the stories that the kids and the grandkids tell about it years down the line. Michael Jackson's a legend because you'll still hear about him 100 years' time. Muhammad Ali's a legend because you'll still hear about him 100 years' time. David Icke will be a legend because you'll still hear about him 100 years' time. And what we're doing, people will talk about in 100 years' time. Because it might not be in our lifetime, but we don't live for our lifetimes. I think we've all got kids. We live for our kids. Do you know what I mean? So the bravery's now, but we don't reap the awards. Reap the awards is knowing that we did our best for our kids down the line. And I think that everyone who's standing in the headwind of this right now is going to come out at the back end of it an incredibly powerful person. And they're the people that Ricky was talking about earlier. They're afraid of. The 5% of the world, the 10% of the world that go, no, not having it. Not having it. They're terrified of that. That's why they hide behind all these things. That's why they put all these barriers in place. And I know what you're saying about these people need to be careful and have got a lot to lose. But when does it come to, Charlie, to the point where your kids are more important than the next bit of money? Because you're going after my kids with a experimental jab right now. And where does it get any more serious than that? I can't think of anything else. I really can't.
Yeah. Yeah. I want prominent people to start talking about this because for whatever reason, we through the media over the years have been conditioned to think that famous people's opinions somehow matter a little bit more. They have a little bit more emphasis. I don't know. Maybe we project that, oh, they must know something we don't know, or they're around people that know something more than we know, or whatever. But for some reason, their opinions matter more. And so I just want to make sure that when those people are speaking out, that they know what they're talking about. Like that Jonathan Isaacs guy, I mentioned him from the Orlando Magic. When he went up there and dropped that information on everybody, there was no place for anyone to go with it. It was
said nobody even tried to follow up and push back because he was making such a logical sense.
Right. So if you can do that all the time. But I've also been around a lot of these guys too, and most of them can't do that. So for the ones that can't do that, what they can do is actually be quiet because they might not be helping themselves or this cause if they're sort of half-assing it or whatever. So I want to make sure that the Muhammad Alis of the world, those are people that had like this amazing sense of right and wrong. And that's desperately missing, I think, from traditional society. So maybe if you're somebody and you don't have all the ins and outs of the details, but you just have a good idea of what's right and wrong, and you see that the coercion that's happening, I correctly identify that as wrong, no matter what it is, that might be good enough for them to just come out and say, listen, I don't know the ins and outs of all of this, but what I do notice is I'm feeling authoritarian tendencies here from all these people, and I'm being told that there's certain things I can't say and can't talk about, and that's a problem. So they can, you know, like, you can still speak out against this, and prominent people need to speak out against this because, like I said, for whatever reason, it carries weight. But make sure that you have your shit together and you know exactly what you're talking about. You can verbalize it in a way that gives the potential opponents nowhere to go with it, because if you leave them a little bit of a crack, they will be completely dishonest in how they portray you. They will take your words out of context. They will say that you are something that you're not. They'll start to question your credentials. They'll do all the shitty things that they do to everybody, but they'll do it to you because you're just a dumb basketball player. Shut up and dribble the ball. You know, they'll do stuff like that. Well, it's hard to say shut up and dribble the ball when the guy just broke down COVID for you in a way that nobody else has. It's hard to tell that guy to shut up because that guy gets it. But not all the guys are like that. So it's like, let's make sure. I want people to be outspoken about this, but if it's up to me, I'd like to make sure that we have the best of the best, because if you give these fuckers in the mainstream media any sort of crack in the facade, they will attack it. They will go after it and say, try to discredit you with all the dirty tricks that they use. And for a guy that is just used to shutting up and dribbling the basketball, they may not be prepared for something like that. They're used to getting questions. I mean, I had this conversation with Carmelo Anthony right when he won the Syracuse national championship and in 2003, and then he was going pro. So it was in this weird in between time, and we were working with him on media stuff, and he was just getting ready to go. He was in LA with us, and he was getting ready to go to do Jim Rome's show that afternoon. And I said, "Do you know who Jim Rome is?" He says, "No, I don't." And I said, "All right, well, let me I gotta explain to you who this is." We were asking him questions about things, and he said, "Nobody's ever asked me questions about anything other than basketball." And I was like, what? Like, it was heartbreaking to me. Man. And it occurred to me, nobody gives a shit what his opinion is about anything except basketball. And so when you get off of that, when you're known for your basketball, and then you start to diverge a little bit into this other stuff, there's a segment of society that will tell you to shut up and dribble. You know, not an educated segment, but a large segment. So these guys need to understand that there's a consequence that comes with that. And if you're ready for it and you can handle it, then go for it. But don't act surprised when the woke mob comes for you, because they come for everyone that stands up against them.
Well, I'm consistent because I'm not, to me, like every athlete, every person, like you said, regardless what you do for a living, should have the right to have a opinion. I mean, I'm going to have a problem with a uneducated opinion, regardless if it comes from an athlete or if it comes from an engineer or a doctor or a construction worker. Like, you know, when people say, "Oh, shut up and dribble," usually they say that because they disagree with the athlete. If the athlete was saying something they agree with, they would be like, "Yeah, good for him for speaking out." So, right. You know, when and you saw it both times in past presidencies. When Obama was in office, you saw people that wouldn't, you know, athletes that didn't want to go to the White House, and counting on what side you're on, you're either happy about that or angry about it. Same thing with Trump. And it's just like, you know, to me, like, everybody should have a right to their opinion. If you're an athlete or if you're a whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, I've talked to factory workers who have just well thought out opinions on history, on whatever. You know, they might be a factory worker, but maybe they're a Vietnam vet. You know, maybe they're maybe they have they came from another country and they lived in through dictatorships or communism or whatever. You know, so you never know people's life experiences. You never know what books they've read, other influences they have in their lives. So, you know, what they do for a living, to me, has nothing to do with, how valid their opinions are. Their opinions is what tells me if they should be valid or not. Like, how well thought out is your opinion? Is it backed up by well thought out perspectives and some research? And have you thought this out? Have taken some time to actually filter out the bad ideas to get to what you think are the good ideas? Like, to me, that's what's important, because at the end of the day, like, who am I? Like, why does my opinion matter? I'm just a Portuguese immigrant, came to America. Like, my story is like many other people's stories, and I've never done anything that was that impressive. Maybe talking to you guys is the most impressive thing I've ever done, and so it's like, who am I? But I think people connect with our shows and who we are, because I think people appreciate the fact that when we share our perspectives, we're being honest. It's a conclusion we've come to after some thinking and some pondering, and if we're telling you this is what we believe, it's because we truly believe it. It's not because we're playing to a party or playing to a tribal group. So I think people appreciate that, and that's okay too. Like, just admitting that you don't know shit. There's nothing wrong with just saying you don't know and you're not sure. I'm always very wary of people who are super positive about their ideas and perspectives and seem like, almost like cultish leader type of talking, where just like, you don't have any doubts about your thoughts or beliefs or anything, and you're sure of all. It's just, I just think there's too much out there to know it all, and there's our thinking should be the way, it's similar to the way science should work, and that's like constantly being debunked. Like, I think this is correct, and I find out, oh shit, I didn't know about that, or I didn't know about this. It's like there should be no truth with a capital T. It's like things should always be evolving and recalculating stuff. So yeah, it's weird. I mean, even us ourselves, we're influencers. Speaking of our ideas and perspectives, like we're influencing some percentage of the population, and I'm sure my ideas are wrong at times. I'm sure my perspectives change at times, but I think if it comes from a good place, if you truly are trying to find the answers or the truth or whatever term you want to use, I think people they'll be much more okay with you being wrong. They're not going to be like, oh, see, you're wrong. It's like, no, because they know that I was wrong, but at that time I truly was looking for answers, and I just came to more and new information, and that's okay too. But I think what Richard said too is really important, is if you just hold on, eventually the truth will come out. And I've told that to people. I have a buddy of mine who's like really just going back and forth. He's like, dude, my job's giving me all these headaches about being vaccinated. I'm like, dude, the longer you can hold on, just hold on. Because I'm like, a year ago, I mean, so many things that are now openly being discussed were being censored on every social media platform. And now people are openly accepting that, yeah, some people die from the vaccine. Before, I mean, a year and a half ago, people wouldn't even admit that. I mean, people wouldn't admit that there was any deaths that were directly linked to the vaccine. Now they're accepting that there's some deaths, but maybe it's less than COVID. And now, and it's like little by little, it's like, if you just hold on, the truth is going to seep out. And people like Alex Jones and people like David Icke, people that years ago seemed like crazy people. Like, what are people saying about David Icke and Alex Jones now? Holy shit. Like, all this stuff that they were saying 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 or whatever, like, that's all happening now. And they seem like the most correct journalists / alternative media people, authors out there, because they were just so ahead of their time. And to see all these things that seem absolutely crazy to the normal person, now we're living through it and we're living in it. I mean, I don't think people are looking at these people like Alex Jones and David Icke in the same light anymore. I think they're looking at them like, hey, I made fun of Alex Jones for a long time. Not myself, but I'm saying that the average person's like, I made fun of Alex Jones, but now when he talks, I might actually listen. And some of the stuff that seems way over the top, maybe I actually might look into it, because some of the stuff that seemed too crazy before, is all happening. So maybe the stuff that seems crazy now, like maybe this is gonna, that's gonna happen too. So it's weird how it's all come around like that.
Yeah, it's very strange, isn't it? I think Unpopular Opinion, by the way, is a great name for a podcast. Definitely someone should pick up on that, Unpopular Opinions, because it's easy to do that one. But I think you're right, and they do Yeah, they do. They have kind of come around to him. I think Alex kind of sometimes shoots himself in the foot, in my personal opinion. He'll do really well, and then he'll grab onto something like Reset Wars, or he'll do something like jump on the Trump train and then get off and not go, do you know what? That was mad. He won't admit it. And I think he does himself a disservice there. And when you're wrong, you're wrong. I mean, many of David's early books, he talks about that he was thinking into areas that he no longer agrees with. So we have to kind of go. But what I find strange is, I think I listened to your Union Unwanted reading. It's a bit of a turning point, like it doesn't here, but when you had Dr. Malone on, and you had also Peter McCullough, I can never pronounce his last name.
Yeah, Dr. Peter McCullough was on the last one. Yeah.
They've done incredible work turning this around, I think, in the last 2 months. I think what those two guys done alone have really pivoted this whole scenario, because you can't argue with them. You can't argue. You wouldn't be able to argue with Carrie Mullis if he was still alive. How can you argue with the guy who's invented the platform for mRNA? You can't. It's ridiculous. He invented it. And you can't. So I think that they've done a great job. What I find really fascinating, you brought this up, one of you guys in the last Union Unwanted, was their kind of unwillingness to go into there being a conspiracy behind this. I found that really interesting, because it's so blatantly obvious. And I know they can't talk it. And you can hear in their voices that I think even Dr. Malone said it's becoming really, really difficult to say there isn't anymore. And it's like, just get over the edge, because we need it to be over the edge here, because this is clearly been planned for a very, very long time. And it's these people with this credentials. Why are they not, do you guys think, listen to as much as someone who, Fauci, who has not treated a COVID patient ever and doesn't treat people regularly, or Bill Gates, who isn't even a medical practitioner and barely can keep his arms still? Why are have they got some training, media training, that's able them to speak in a way that people can just get the sound bites, where these Malone and McCullough doesn't have that training? I sort of bring it back around to that, because is there a way that these people can speak in a way that common people can understand, but also can take the weight of their clear experience and expertise behind it? Because why would you listen to a Fauci but not a Dr. Malone when he's invented it? I don't understand that.
Well, it's about media access. I mean, the media just says these people are the trusted professionals and these people are not. If it were just based on credentials, experience, expertise, and things like that, we would be listening to Dr. Robert Malone. And I've had this conversation with friends of mine. And they'll say, well, I'll say, listen, these shots, they're no good, man. They're no good. And my friend said, well, I mean, that's your opinion. And I said, no. We had the guy who invented the fucking technology on our show telling us that the shots are no good. It's no longer my opinion.
Yep.
It's his opinion. And he's the guy that invented it. Have you had the inventor of the mRNA technology on your show? No, you haven't. Well, maybe you should get a show and maybe invite him on, have him come down and break this down, because the information's there. And it's a real interesting psychological tactic that the media has done. They've put a barrier up where if you even consider people outside of their little world, their little sphere of influence, that Fauci group and everything, if you listen to anybody outside of that, you're anti-science, it's horse paste. The audacity of these people. If we lived in like a normal society where we had, instead of 5 media companies, we had 50 like we've had back in the 80s, then you'd have a few of those that were poking holes in the official narrative. Obviously, we know why there's not 50 media companies anymore. We understand why. But if we did have that, then we would have the ability to poke some holes in this. So I think that right now, the mainstream corporate media is a small entity that's easy to control. It's not, you don't need to have 50 CEOs at Epstein's Island. You just need 5. And I'm sure those 5, you don't have to entice them too much. This is their world. So they'll go to the island voluntarily. So you really, what you find is that the amount of pressure points for controlling almost all of the mainstream media, very few. You just have to get a couple people saying a couple things, and And that sets the narrative. And then you demonize and try to discredit and dehumanize anybody that says anything other than that with the real easy tack, the conspiracy theorists and all that. Now, if this is your first time going up against that sort of stuff, you may be like, I can't believe they called me a conspiracy theorist, and I can't believe they did this, and I can't believe they were so dishonest. And, like Dr. Robert Malone's like, I can't believe they took down I can't believe they took down my LinkedIn. I'm like, I sent him a message saying the reason why they took down your LinkedIn is that Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, is one of the managing partners of World Economic Forum. Like, what did you think was going to happen? So this is I have a dream, like Martin Luther King. I have a dream that when we get past all of this COVID stuff, right, like a year or so, the relationship that everybody has with the mainstream media is forever changed. Ours was changed years ago. We don't believe anything they say. And I don't know that we'll get to a point where everybody shares our belief that everything the mainstream media says is a lie. But I do have this dream that we will get to a point where, whether it was the blatant lies, whether it was the social media manipulation, whether it was the introduction of fact checkers with their protected opinions and the disaster that is, there's just enough fuckery going on inside the media that even the most fluorided out sheeple person gets to a point where they're like, I just don't know if the media is always telling me the truth. I'll settle for that. That would be a victory as far as I'm concerned, because what we have in America right now are over 100 million people that are completely and utterly convinced that the mainstream media is telling them the truth every single night, every single episode, that Rachel Maddow would never in a million years consider lying to them. She is trusted. She is above reproach. There are people that honestly and truthfully believe this and incorporate this into their worldview. So if we can get those people to second guess the mainstream media, and they should, then I think that things are going to start changing. But if you go back and look at any of these things, Kennedy assassination, 9/11, COVID, whatever, what's the common denominator here? The mainstream media is driving the getaway car in every single instance. They are co-conspirators in this. And if you can get rid of them, or at least severely diminish their ability to lie or to get people to believe their lies, then you're on to something. And if this COVID thing does anything, what it has shown a lot of people is that the media has no problem lying to you. They'll call you anti-science when they themselves are anti-science, and that they are quite literally the enemy of humanity. That if someone were to ask me, were two institutions that went away that would make this world a much better place, central banking and the mainstream media. If you got rid of both of those, this world would improve overnight.
Well, that was the theme of what's the one, They Live, wasn't it? At the very end, it was the media that they took down. Yeah. He took down the media. And I've said this from the start, like Ricky and Johnny, if we don't need to be outside Parliament, we need to be outside the BBC, and we need to be inside the BBC. We need to be inside Sky and Channel 4 and taking it to the point where they can't get into the bloody building to report. That's what we need to be doing. We need to be in those. And that's what the great thing about Anonymous when it started. And I agree, I understand there's a lot more going on there than was actually being portrayed. But the idea of being able to take over the media was the best thing. Take away their voice, take away their microphone. That's what we need to do. Not really go after the governments, because the governments don't have anything if the media don't allow them to have it. And they can switch it on a dime. And that's the power of what we were starting. I said to Jamie when we started Ickonic 2.5 years ago, I said, look, there's no industry. There's no alternative media industry. There's a bunch of alternative people on YouTube doing great work, great researchers, great content producers, but no organization. We need to build an industry. And that was the idea behind Ickonic. And I feel like we're just out of necessity, people like ourselves, people like Whitney Webb, some of these great people like James Corbett. I mean, there's so many, there's thousands of fantastic content creators, reporters, proper journalists now that are building an alternative media that it's almost like a dinghy or a little lifeboat where these Robert Malones can get on and these Dr. McCullens can get on and come with us and speak with us. And that ship, that big Titanic, is sunk and it's sinking. And they need to come up along with us. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have the size of the boat we want, but we will do. And I feel like we are building something. And you're going to have two medias. You're going to have an alternate media and a mainstream media, and they're going to be the same size. And they're going to be this, but it's probably going to take a long time. What do you think, guys? I've been saying, people have been saying to me, how long is this going to last? I still don't think, in the UK, I genuinely think you've got about another year of this before they really try and push climate, because I don't think it's got much more legs, much more gas in the tank. It's different for you guys in the US, isn't it? Because you're such different from state to state. Here, they are really, really desperate, really trying to keep this afloat. I don't think they've got more of a year on it.
Well, they told us they were the CNN producer that was caught undercover from Project Veritas. He told that guy, well, we're kind of done with Biden and everything and the Trump stuff. We're going to pivot to climate change towards the end of the year and beyond. So, I mean, they put it in their diary, Dear Diary, 2022, the year of where we focus on climate change. So I mean, we'll get the COVID stuff for a while here. We'll get the preposterous attempt at trying to connect COVID to climate change, which we're already starting to see with laughable results. Talking about how kids are just, one guy in British Columbia got diagnosed, or lady, I think, got diagnosed with climate change, so like, I, for one, am here for that. I am here to watch these retards at CNN try and piece this together. I'd like to see them make this argument. This ought to be good. They can't make a logical argument out of normal stuff. They're going to try and tie climate change to COVID. Good luck. I want to watch this. I want to watch Don Lemon come on and try and explain to us how the best way to fight tornadoes. And they fucking said this, the best way to fight tornadoes and hurricanes is to make sure that everybody is vaccinated first. It's like,
go on. How did he try and explain that one?
Oh, I don't know. How can you compete with that level of comedy?
Well, you can't. I mean, why we do What If. The What If show was built and around this, the whole thing's been built around picking these moments out because they're great. Ricky, what do you think about how long you got left of it? I mean, that is, I saw that one about the first person diagnosed with climate change. It's like being diagnosed with hair. It's like
right. I am diagnosed with
How do I get that?
Yeah. It's fucking insane.
I need a prescription.
Who do I have to bang without a condom to get that sexually transmitted disease?
Me, actually.
Oh, in that case, maybe I don't mind being bald eventually. You're a good looking lad, but I'm just saying, I like women.
Only from the top up. It's not so good on the bottom half.
Well,
it's equally as yellow looking. But yeah, no, it's so the dope. Have you guys seen the Dope Sick series on Hulu?
No, but Sam keeps telling me to watch it, and I gotta watch it. So
I feel like everybody should watch that, and everybody should. Most people have watched it, but maybe rewatch Dallas Buyers Club, and it's both of them will show. See, the thing is, like, some people they won't listen for if we tell them, but if they watch a series or they watch a movie and it'll connect with them in a certain way because you see the characters, you get emotionally attached. And so Dope Sick's about the history of OxyContin and how basically the pharmaceutical companies lied about how addictive it was. It's also funny how they use similar lingo. So when the drug was being less effective in time, right? And you're going to see the parallels here, less effective in time. And then what they did was they're like, well, how do we basically hide the fact that our product's not working? They're like, how about we call it what is it? What do they call it? It was breakthrough pain. And they're like, so what we'll do is we'll give it this medical term. It's breakthrough pain. So it's basically pain that broke through the potency of our pills. So, and what we'll do is
breakthrough COVID.
Exactly. So they called it breakthrough pain and they doubled the dosage. So they're like, what we'll do is we'll tell doctors it's called breakthrough pain. It's funny how they just make up medical terms with no science behind it. So they're like, we'll call it breakthrough pain, which what was really happening was the fact that they're being exposed that the drug was addictive, that you use a certain amount and then eventually it wasn't working and you needed more and you needed more and you needed more. Similar to the way a drug addict needs more and more of a drug to get that fix. So they called it breakthrough pain, made up this term to basically disguise it all, and then also justify giving out more of their product, which made them even more money because now they can give double the dosage, similar to the vaccines not working. And then they call it breakthrough case. And then they're like, now you need more of our product that didn't work the first time because more of it will now do what, but so you'll see the parallels. You'll also see how much, because the thing is when people hear the word medicine, and so much of this is just lifelong conditioning, right? Like you're talking about the power of the media. The reason why the media in America, well, I guess on the surface, we talk about how we need to protect the media and the free press and all that stuff, which there basically isn't anymore. Like you said, like most of the good journalists and researchers and stuff are all independent. The mainstream media, there isn't any good journalism or anything like that. But the reason why it's so important to protect them is because at a young age, you're kind of told when you're put on the news, like these are the people that are telling you what's going on in the world. Like these are people that you go to for that information. And as a child, over and over again, you don't realize like you start gaining this trust in the media. And then there's people who just can't snap out of that. Friends of ours, Adam and Deborah from Deborah Gets Red Pilled. I don't know if you're familiar with this show, or maybe we've all been on it, but the thing about that show that is a example of like this problem is the fact that Deborah will talk to us and many other people. How many hours of information did she get? And yet, like Adam's frustrated because it's like he still can't get through to her. He feels like he's made zero ground, and I feel like a lot of it is this distrust for. It's almost like somebody who grows up believing wrestling's real, and then it's like even though you tell them it's fake, they still get into it, and once they put it on, they get emotionally involved and they're screaming at the TV. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that, because obviously if you get into this story, I get it. But with the news, it's much more dangerous, because what you're doing is, regardless how many times they get exposed for lying or being biased or being pushed in one direction or another from a pharmaceutical company or whatever, or suppressing a story because of where their money's coming from, or protecting one of the elites, they still turn on the news, and for some reason they're innocent until proven guilty over and over again. And I'm like, they've been proven guilty 1 billion times. Like, how many more times are you going to believe what they're saying? And I think a lot of this, and it's similar to like coaches, teachers, right? We tell kids like, oh, be good to your teacher, be respectful to your teacher. So it's like we're constantly conditioning these things, and it's like, listen, your teacher's not always right. So when they're trying to push their ideas on you, when any person of authority, and that's the thing, like I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, listen, I'm not going to help mold the easiest kids to raise, but I am going to help mold kids that are going to think for themselves. Because I do tell them, like, if your teacher says something that's incorrect, there's nothing wrong with correcting them. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing with them. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing with me. I'm like, there's a difference between being disrespectful and just understanding that just because something's a rule, or because you're being told that something is correct from a person of authority, it doesn't mean it is correct. And I'm very open with my kids, where like, if you disagree with me, let's talk about it. And if I can't defend my perspective, if I can't defend my opinions, then maybe I should reconsider why I'm pushing these ideas on you, or why I'm telling you not to do something or to do something or whatever. But I think it's very dangerous when you get these kids. Just recently we had, I think Charlie had the author on before I did, and recently I had the author on of Government, the Greatest Scam in History. What was that, the title? Yeah, and on the cover of that book is all these students, right? Facing the American flag, doing probably the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm assuming. And like, just think about it, the Pledge of Allegiance. Like, these kids are pledging their allegiance to what? Like, they don't even understand the concept yet. They don't even like what your little brain still consuming the earth, still consuming information in the world and trying to like make sense of all of it. And you're already getting them to pledge allegiance. And don't get me wrong, like I have this love-hate relationship with this whole concept, because in a way, especially during 2020, in a way, I've kind of found things I kind of pushed back more against in the past, like organized religion and being patriotic and nationalism, which I thought a lot of these things probably did more harm than good. They've come. I've come to a place in my thinking where now I'm like, okay, they're beneficial to the world at the moment, because the whole spirit of the U.S. and people who are those people who pledge allegiance to that flag, they're also the ones who are the most pissed about losing some of those rights and ideas that the country was founded on, because they're so patriotic, because they did pledge allegiance to that flag, that they're saying, fuck you, media, fuck you, whoever's ruining America, the America that I love and I pledge allegiance to. And same thing with the spiritual religious people, who a lot of times I'm like, oh, they've it can create closed-mindedness. It can make people tribalistic, believe in things that maybe aren't true. All these things that, things that can be harmful in regards to organized religion. You can take advantage of people, but a lot of those people are also the ones who are the most outspoken. When you look at Dr. Peter McCullough, you look at Dr. Carrie Madej, you look at Brian Festa from the CT Freedom Alliance and We the Patriots USA. So many people in the pro freedom movement, anti mandates, masks, and all this stuff, like they're all super spiritual, and they're all, not to put words in their mouths, but I think most of them would consider themselves religious. And so I think in this moment in time, some of these things that I thought probably did humanity some bad has actually been beneficial, and it's motivated them more than the average person to fight back, either because of your allegiance to what you think America was founded on, and these principles that you think are so important and much more important than anything else. So it motivates you to fight, or your understanding or belief in evil makes it easier for you to understand that somebody can purposely harm another person. Because I think you talk to the average person and you tell them that they could possibly be putting out a vaccine that they know is going to kill some people, they would look at you like you're crazy. Or when you talk to them about Bill Gates and his depopulation, even though, he talks about it on a TED Talk and an interview after interview that, just a population issue. But if you get into that eugenics conversation, people look at you like you're crazy. And I think when you look at spiritual people or religious people, if you believe in a internal good, you must believe in a evil. Things balance themselves out. So I think it's easier for them to understand that. And a lot of people are saying, like, this is we feel like we're in a spiritual type of war right now. And even myself, who's not a religious person, I guess I'll say I'm spiritual, but I don't consider myself religious at all. I also have a sense that it's like a spiritual war right now. Do you guys get that? And are you guys religious or spiritual? Would you consider? No, but you get that feeling, right? Like this is bigger than any individual or anything. Like it's almost like we're living through this good versus evil battle. And I think so. I think people who are religious and spiritual, they can grasp that better. Where you talk to the average person, and that goes into the whole other agendas of like maybe removal of this war against religion, this war against family values, these war against these just these things that I didn't really think was a part of the agenda. Like now I'm starting to think like maybe it is a part of the agenda. Maybe this idea of were you going to say something, Charlie?
I've never called anyone a commie in my life until this last year. I always thought that was kind of a lame insult. And what I've discovered is that there is a segment of society that has these like commie Marxist ideals that are like really super intentionally destructive to society. And I think that they're pissing off a lot of the religious people that see this and they go, like, for better or worse, like organized religious people, when you start messing with their religion, they get really mad when you start closing their churches and saying, and maybe they are more spiritually in tune or seeking out, like they go to church services or whatever their religious services. They're told about good things and the good things that come from their religion. It's very tribalistic. Someone in the outside might be attacking us, right? Then you get a load of the Faucis of the world, and you go, well, that's that evil guy that you were talking about. I mean, it doesn't look like the devil, but he's certainly acting like it. They're attacking our society. They're attacking our way of life. They're attacking our beliefs. They're attacking our science. They're attacking all this stuff. And the religious people are starting to get kind of fed up with it. You see what's been happening in Canada. They're like arresting pastors and doing things like that. Like, that shit doesn't have an expiration date. That makes people angry forever. And so I think that the hardcore organized religious faction can, because they're part of organized religion, they are susceptible to being organized, whether it's Q or the vaccine cult or the religion thing or whatever. You can get these people in big groups and make them do what you want them to do. But you got to be very careful, because it seems like the organized religion had the organized big pharma tried to get into a fight with them, closing their churches and using the same tactics. And I think organized religion rightly saw this and went, whoa, you're the enemy. We don't like this. So wouldn't it be funny if after all of this, what got us out of it was like the hardcore religious? They're making it a right versus left thing. So you've got, like, in America on the right, you've got the conservatives, which typically, not always, but typically kind of lean Christian. And now you've got the vaccine debate being politicized. They're pulling up the old tweets from people saying, I would never take a vaccine if Donald Trump put it out. And then, like, 8 months later, now that Biden's here, they're like, take your vaccine. You're stupid if you don't, and so they politicized it. And so it's been fascinating to watch this whole thing. Like, it's been psychotic and frustrating and everything, but one of our sort of skills, Rich, you as a filmmaker and podcaster, and Ricky and I as podcasters, is that we're sort of, our job is to be observers and watch what's going on. And this has been the greatest show in the world the last 2 years. I mean, I've never seen anything quite like it. And I was I had enough going on before this. I mean, I had enough conspiracy stuff I was into. I didn't need this. But man, watching this and watching the psychological operations that are happening, watching how they're trying to get one side fighting with the other side, how they're trying to how they'll take something that is so anti-science, like masks that come out of boxes that on the side of the box says does not prevent the transmission, spread, or anything having to do with coronavirus. And then you say, I'm not wearing the mask. And then they call you anti-science for it, even though on the side of the box it says it doesn't work. This has been fascinating to me. And I think that we'll see how it all plays out. But the hardcore religious people tend to click up, right, with their religion and defend themselves. And when you start to feel like you're being persecuted, but it's not coming from another religion, it's coming from the religion of science. It's like, oh, I expected this from the Muslims, but I didn't expect it from the science. Now the science is in a battle with Christianity, and I'm interested to watch how it all plays out, because it's fascinating.
And
it's just a cult of scientism, and I had this is the greater good is their cult. The greater good, it means nothing. It makes as much sense as make America great again. It doesn't mean anything. What does great mean? What does make mean? The greater good doesn't mean anything. It means your individual good doesn't matter, as opposed to the greater good. Who decides the greater good? It's a cult. It's an absolute cult. I even had the guy that rang up my partner because she works for the NHS and she'd probably be leaving because she won't be having the experiment. And he even said, you need to do it for the great good. This is a guy that's ringing thousands of people at the NHS. Should not be in the position. He's clearly insane. He said to her, you could take 1,000 of these jabs, one after another, and you'd be fine. This is the guy that's ringing around the NHS to tell people that don't want to get it, to try and convince them. He's insane. They've allowed insane people into these jobs, and they've purposely found these insane people over the last 30 years to go into these positions. And I've seen this happen with child support, with youth workers. They've found psychologists that are even allowing people with borderline personality disorders, cluster B personality disorders, which is narcissism, which is borderline, which covers most of the cluster B personality disorders, all of them actually. These are people that you wouldn't trust to hold your car keys because they key you in the face with them, and they're allowing them to go into positions of authority. That's been done purposefully. The people that are working in the mainstream media, they've been put there on purpose, either because they don't question anything, they've compromised, or they're just really, really dumb, or they're narcissists and want to just be seen on the telly. Purposely picked psychotic cult that's been cultivated literally over the last 30 years to push this left, right, and center. And it's incredible, as you say, Charlie, just to watch it. It's mad. These people are mad. You
could be Piers Morgan and you could be all of those things, all wrapped up into one.
He should not be allowed out of the house around other human beings. He's mentally ill, and he's got a Netflix series where he interviews psychopaths and serial killers.
Yeah, we have Keith Olbermann here in the United States, and he used to be like on ESPN doing the sports, and then he was on MSNBC for a long time, and now he's just, his job is to be a professional crazy person, yelling at people on Twitter and telling them that they need to get child protective services involved, take away their kids if people won't take the shots and shit like that. And you go, wow, you're a psychopath of the highest order, and he's lecturing people from the balcony of his penthouse apartment that overlooks, like, over his shoulder. You can see all of Central Park. It's a multi-million-dollar view. And he's lecturing everybody on how they need to just, get along for the greater good. And you're going, holy shit. If you had any sense of like ability for self-reflection, you would recognize what an unbelievable douchebag you are, telling everybody, talking about the greater good while you are projecting an image that says 0.1% over, I'm in one of the most expensive cities in the world. I'm literally in an apartment that overlooks Central Park, the most desired view. And I'm going to tell you that we all need to get along for the greater good. And you just go, how do you not see this? Are the mirrors in your house broken? Do you not recognize your own insanity? And I think you're right, Rich, that a lot of these people are chosen for these positions because they don't have that hang up of like self-reflection. Who needs that? I'm supposed to just pitch a narrative. That's my job. Self-reflection is for simpletons.
But do you think, because religious people would say that, right? That there's a war against religion. That's the way they've been. I mean, a lot of religious people have been saying that for a while, that some of these policies and what they're doing is they're trying to create a godless world. Do you think that that's kind of what they are attempting to do? Because you look at someone like Fauci or whoever the elite is and are doing these horrible things. If you believed in a afterlife, if you believed in a higher power of some sort, wouldn't you be a little concerned about paying for some of your, things you've done? And I feel like the only way you could go ahead and do these things is you almost have to not believe in anything else. Or maybe, the whole satanic thing, right? Like they're just...
I have two thoughts on this, and it comes from me changing my opinion on these things over time. The first one was that I used to hear people say that the media was left-leaning and liberal bias in the media, and I thought that those were only Republicans complaining. I've now come to realize that that is a true statement. Second part is that the religious right, the Christian conservatives, would say they're trying to take God out of the school. And I would always roll my eyes and go, that's just the Republicans being hypersensitive and everything. And I've changed my mind on that. They are trying to take God out of school. Now, I'm not like you said, I'm not into organized religion. It's not my thing. It doesn't bother me one way or the other. If they're trying to take God out of school, I suppose a case could be made that let's just take religion out of school. Like, we don't need that. But what I've come to understand is that they're trying to, it's more than just trying to take God out of school, which gets the right really pissed off. They're trying to take the family unit out of school. At least here in America, with these cultural Marxists and the sort of gender neutralness and I'm going to come out to my students that are all in kindergarten and tell them that I'm non-binary, and all these videos that we see, all this subversion of, oh, you don't have to tell your parents about the vaccine. Just come, we'll give you a slice of pizza in Los Angeles. This teacher, I don't know if it was a teacher or some school administrator, got busted luring a kid to give them the shot in exchange for a slice of pizza, and then says, don't tell your parents. That's groomer talk. So we've got all this groomer behavior. We've got this intentional destruction of the family unit in school. And I used to think that stuff was just the right having fantasies or extrapolate, like make believe stuff, like, oh, well, it's probably not that bad. Yeah, I think you guys are exaggerating. I've changed my opinion on that. I've come to my own personal conclusion that it is true. They're trying to take not just God out of the schools, which may or may not be an inappropriate place for God to be, right? Maybe in the churches or in your home is a better place, but they're intentionally trying to destroy the family. And that comes, and it's not even just school too, but we see it in Congress this year. The House of Representatives during the summer passed new legislation banning words like mother, father, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, cousin, father-in-law, mother-in-law, all the terms that there's like 30 of them that you would use to describe the family. They ban them. You're not allowed to say them. Why? Because remove the words used to describe the family is the first step towards removing the family. And like I said, I used to think that these people were insane for like, oh, you're going down a rabbit hole that isn't there, but there's more to it. I've come around on my way of thinking on this stuff. And I think that the loony left and that those Soros-backed chaos agents are in fact partnering up with these school groups, of course, Common Core, financed by Bill Gates, no surprise there, that they are trying to just change the culture so much that this world is unrecognizable. And anybody that thinks that they're going to make, just think of the sort of mentality you have to think that, it would make this world better if I destroyed families. Like, how can that make the world better? And yet that seems to be their mission. So it's a weird, God and schools. So it's like God/family. For some people, they're the same thing. For some people, they're an integral part. For me, family, yes, but the God part, I don't pretend to know how it all works. I'm not praying to an imaginary man in the sky, but some people do. And that's fine with me because it's none of my business. So, but where it does become my business, whether you're the loony left or the hardcore religious right, is if you start saying, I have special information that you don't have, and God is telling me that I need to come in here and do all these crazy things. Or if you're the left saying, I have special information and I know that we need to remove all of the terminology that you use to describe families, and we need to install pedophiles instead of teachers. That's a problem too. So any of the extremist components can be dangerous. But boy, I've just come to change my views on some of these things and recognize that the complaints of the right, the conservatives, are probably a little bit more valid than I ever gave them credit for.
There's also before we wrap this up, there's always also on the Fauci thing that you just mentioned, Ricky, is I pointed over there because that's where you are on my screen, but I realised that people are watching this wouldn't have a clue which direction I'm pointing. They talk about usurping God is one thing. And they talk about living forever. And if you listen to them, a lot of them talk about, I'm going to live forever, which is obviously an old satanic ritual that they go, Hollywood is built around this living forever. It's always built about becoming a star. Well, that meant that you live forever. You had eternal youth. We've all heard about this, the eternal youth, and the way of they found the fountain of youth. There has a satanic element that not a lot of people talk about. Remember, Fauci is a Jesuit. He was brought up in a Jesuit school. He was Jesuit taught. Bill Gates' wife was Jesuit taught, but a lot of these are Jesuits. They have a belief, different varying beliefs, but one of the beliefs is that, like the Sabbatean belief is, or the Aleister Crowley belief is that order out of I think it was not order out of chaos. It's about bringing about God by causing as much chaos as possible, as he would come and save the world and restart it, because it's abomination, and he would restart it that way. So there's almost like an element of a lot of them, and there's different factions in this cult that believe if they cause as much carnage as possible, the second coming will happen, they will bring it forth. Other ones want to usurp God and become God. So they are, and if you look at people's Instagram, you look at kids nowadays, they are God. They just, everything's about them, me, I, look what I'm doing, me on everything. How many followers have I got? It's little mini cults. Everybody's talking about me and I and everything like that. It's, and I don't mean that, I mean, we're going to do that anyway. Of course we are, but it's to an extreme. Everybody is trying to be a God, and they're trying to be a Godhead, and they're trying to, so all of these people like Fauci, they believe they have the right to be a God. They have the right to lord over you. They're completely detached. So not only do they probably not believe in a God that's going to they're going to have to answer to, they are God, and they're doing God's work. So they believe that they are so detached and not been able to look at the fact that Fauci's probably killed a credible amount of people in the last 30 years, and Bill Gates would have done the same. They can't look at that. They can't look at the monster they've become. So they have to be a God. They have to be a reason why. All serial killers, none of them probably think they're bad people. They think they're either pushed to it, there's a reason to it, for it. Pornography was the guy, the handsome one that went and killed loads of people, and he said it was pornography that drove him to it. Can't remember his name now. Very famous killer. Ted Bundy. And he never thought he was a bad person. He was abused a bit as a kid, but a lot of kids are. They become gods as a way of controlling. So a lot of these Jesuits are taught that they're actually soldiers of the Vatican to go out and push this agenda, and this is what they should be doing. So he sees him, he's going to cull the population to save the planet. He probably believes what he's doing. He's probably convinced himself that what he's doing is good. And that's where the psychotic break comes in. So then you're seeing it in the people now that have taken the doctors that have actually going to have to look at the fact that they've injected this shit into people in 2 years' time, and people start to really drop from this or accumulate the nanoparticles in the organs and the ovaries, which they're being told about. They've been told about that these nanoparticles will accumulate in the organs, in the ovaries, in the bone marrow. That's going to be coming about. Then they're going to have to look at the fact that they have to do it. So are they going to go, oh shit, I've killed a lot of people? Or are they going to go, I was just doing what I was told, like the Nazis did, like the brown shirts did? Or are they going to go, oh no, well, we're doing it for the greater good because we save more people than we're killing? Do you know what? People don't look at themselves as the evil baddie. The baddie doesn't think they're a baddie. Of course they don't. They want to be the goodie, even if they know deep down at the core of their being they're a baddie. When we do something wrong, we always know when we're fucked up. We might want to convince ourselves for 30 years that we haven't. We might drink on top of it. We might take drugs to try and make the guilt go away and the shame go away. These people feel it deep down in their core. They're just burying it and burying it and burying it and burying it. And they're scared. They've got to see. They don't know where they're going next. None of us do. They're terrified of where they're going next. And we know good from bad from the moment we're born, wrong from right from the moment we're born. So you can't convince me, no matter how much you put on the telly, that people in the world don't know that it's not right to tell someone what to put in their body and what not to put. You can't mandate something into their body. I'm sorry, you just can't. There's no way around that. I don't need a conversation. I don't need to. There's no argument here. You are not allowed to put something in my body I don't want in, and I'm not allowed to put something in yours. That's called rape. We have terms for that. So you know right from wrong, and I know right from wrong. No matter how much woke shit you come up with and say it's for the greater good, I don't want it in my body. You stay away from me. If you've got a problem with that, stay indoors, put your mask on. You can do things about that. They know right from wrong. And that's where it comes down to. These cults try and twist right and wrong. They put it upside down. They invert everything. And this is a cult we're dealing with. So when people say, I can't understand how they think that they're mad. How you don't rationalize madness. It's like trying to fix a computer with a broken computer. It's broke. You see it as a broke person. This person is broke. Fauci is a broke human being. You're not going to get anything good out of a broke human being. Gates is broken. They're all broken human beings.
Lady on the airplane with her mask off, who's yelling at the guy about putting the mask on and how he's spitting on him and everything. She's broken too.
She's broken. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are people that like you put them in the return box and you send it off to Best Buy and they get put in the remanufactured department and you can get them for a discount because they're broken. Exactly. You can't fix that lady.
Yeah, absolutely right. And she'll know at her core when she woke up in the cell the next morning that she was broken. And she'll know that she's broken, but she's going to have to face it. That's not for me or you to take a vaccine so she don't feel broken. Piss off. Fix yourself.
Well, I think
it's mad.
People like Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates, when you have that much power and influence, and you're probably surrounded by yes men, right? People who are just going to bow down to everything you say, it has a psychological effect on them. In the same way that throughout history, there's always been a small portion of the population that feel like they're the ones who should be making decisions for the greater good because the rest of us aren't intelligent enough. We're not, capable enough. And for whatever reason, either because of their money, success, resource, bloodline, right? Monarchies, they feel like they're the ones who should be deciding what's best for humanity. And I think, like you said, they truly, some of them might potentially truly believe that the evil that they're doing is for the greater good. I mean, anybody who's looked into the history of eugenics, and there's a great documentary, I don't know if it's still available on YouTube, called MAFA 21, MAAFA 21. Great documentary that goes through the history of eugenics, and it's actually really goes into people on the left and minorities should be the most pissed because it was they're the ones, they were being targeted, the minorities. And obviously everybody knows the history of Margaret Sanger and all that stuff, but it's just obviously some people were into eugenics because they're purely evil, but I think same as what's going on now, some people truly believed it was for the betterment of society, the betterment of humanity. It was because they were just trying to protect future generations. So that type of thinking is always dangerous. And anytime you're forcing stuff onto people, that's Jimmy Dore, who I'm a fan of. He was on my show years ago. But he just had a little debate with Graham Elwood. And, I give Jimmy Dore a lot of credit because much like us, who are politically homeless, he's kind of politically homeless, even though he puts a label on himself. He considers himself a lefty, but he's a lefty who's a critical thinking lefty. And
which means he's not a lefty.
Basically, you're kind of right.
He left the lefties.
Yeah, and but he had this debate with Graham Elwood, and he's just like, Graham Elwood is just like so convinced. He's like, there's nothing wrong with mandates. He's like, healthcare for all is a mandate. And he's just like, but it's not forcing a medical procedure that could harm people. Like, to me, and I know some people hate the fact that I always use peanut butter as an example, but it's a perfect example. Like, if I forced everybody to eat peanut butter, some people are going to die, and it's not okay. Like, if I say peanut butter can cure some diseases, okay, it's healthy for you. But here's the risks. Like, some people might have allergic reaction to it, but I put out the information, let people decide for themselves which risk and reward ratio, what they're willing to do, the risk for that reward. Like, that's up to them. And people just don't see that. Like, this idea that you think that this is best for everybody, and it's okay that some are going to be sacrificed. Okay. For the greater good. That's the same type of thinking in eugenics. I mean, that's literally what Nazi Germany was doing. It was that type of thinking. Like, they thought like maybe there was some evil, aspects to what we're doing, and some people could consider it evil. but they were convinced it was for the greater good. It was the greater good of their country or their civilization, their humanity, the greater good for, the human race. Like it's the same type of polluted and dangerous thinking. And a lot of people who are pushing these they don't realize that. They don't see the parallels. They don't see, when people bring up Nazi Germany, they're like, oh, yeah, that's such an extreme example. It's like, no, it's not, because of those people during that time, they truly believed many of them truly believed what they were doing wasn't evil. They truly believed it was for the greater good, and sacrifices must be made for the greater good. And it's the same thing that's going on now. Jimmy Dore was vaccine injured. To mandate him, if he's at a job that's mandating the vaccine, I mean, to think that he has to take something that could potentially harm himself just to keep his job, I mean, that's insanity.
Oh, you sound like an anti-peanut butter person.
I'm very anti-peanut butter. No, I'm kidding. I love peanut butter. But, the thing is, like, it doesn't make any sense. And this whole thing, and talking to people who live in Canada, and I think the UK, they're using the same type of just rhetoric in regards to like, oh, it's not about me. You get vaccinated. Like, you're a selfish bastard if you don't get vaccinated. Like, you get vaccinated to protect everybody. And it's like, nah, like that doesn't make any logical sense, any scientific sense. I mean, Jimmy Dore showed it. It was either on the FDA or the CDC website, where it says on there that the vaccine has not been proven to stop transmission. So all these people who are saying that, like, you get no, it's like, if you want to protect yourself, you get vaccinated. That's it. You're not protecting anybody else. You getting vaccinated is strictly and specifically just to protect yourself. You're not protecting anybody else. It doesn't stop the viral load. It doesn't stop you from transmitting it. It doesn't stop you from getting it. So this whole idea of like you feeling like you're doing something moral, or you're on this moral pedestal looking down on us because we won't get vaccinated. Like, it's not even true. It's not even factual, and not even the elite and the pharmaceutical companies are even projecting this. And this is why the media and influencers and all these people are so important in this whole game, because the pharmaceutical companies haven't even once said that it stops you from getting it or spreading it. All this information that's being circulated comes completely from like the media saying things like that, influencers saying things like that,
the president of the United fucking States saying that, the head of the CDC
crazy
coming out.
You say the opposite. If you said the opposite, like if I say the vaccine, or if I like, I just don't understand how, if I say the vaccine doesn't stop you from getting or spreading it, that can get me censored or banned. But if I say something that's factually not true, misinformation, that get the vaccine to protect others, like there's no censorship going on at all for any of those people. And that's literally scientifically proven to be incorrect. It is pharma propaganda when you say that. Like, it's literally like, there's no science behind that. And it just shows. That's why, like, this, Dr. Robert Malone, I feel bad for him, because there's so many people who dismiss everything he says because they say, oh, well, he's not, there's been articles saying that he's not the founder of the mRNA technology. I'm like, well, he wasn't the like lone solo individual. He was a part of the process. He was a part of the group of people, and he goes into all that. Even if he wasn't involved in that at all, his knowledge of this stuff cannot be dismissed. Like, even if he wasn't the sole individual who came up with it himself, but but the same media who told you that Joe Rogan was taking horse pills is the same media that you're going to believe that is telling you that Robert Malone's full of shit. Like, and
that you needed to listen to Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch from Sesame Street. Like,
I love that the Dr. Peter McCullough called, because one thing that was pissing me off about Joe Rogan and his, I loved his interview with Dr. Sanjay Gupta. I'm glad he called him out on all that stuff. But the part of it that really pissed me off was that he truly still believed that Dr. Sanjay Gupta was just naive and he just wasn't a bad person. And it was just his opinion based on his information. And then when Dr. Peter McCullough, and I don't know, Richard, if you saw Dr. Peter McCullough on Joe Rogan podcast, but when he says, like, you were literally like, he was knowingly deceiving children, but on Sesame Street. And because you know there's a risk and you're convincing them to take something that could potentially harm them. No, and you know that they're literally at zero risk of getting harmed or hospitalized or death from the virus. Like he knew that. He knew what he was doing. And the worst part is on the Rogan podcast, he couldn't even play naive anymore. Couldn't say that I just wasn't aware of the information, because he talked about it on the Rogan podcast. Rogan's like, he's like, I know he knows the stats, the statistics. He's like, we talked about it when he was on my show. And yet he goes on Sesame Street. So I'm like, Rogan, like, do you not see it? Like, he's not just ignorant. Like, he's not a good person. I'm like, if anything, that proves that he's that psychopathic, I don't know which is sociopath or psychopath, the one that can seem completely normal and yet, you know, ends up killing people or whatever. I'm like, he's that serial killer who's literally like putting out false information and yet can convince others that he's completely normal. You know, he's you know, similar to the serial killer that you see interviews with the neighbors, like, he seemed like such a great dude, he's a normal, you know, and it's like, no, dude, he's not a great dude. This guy is good at his job because he's convinced the public that he's a sincere person who cares about people and is normal, and yet is doing something, knowingly putting out bad information, dangerous information, and directly going at children, which is the part of it that pisses me off the most, because we all have kids, and this idea that you should vaccinate kids, like, if that doesn't wake people up, and the fact that even with the bullshit numbers, and we're using the bullshit numbers, the manipulated, inflated bullshit numbers, they're still at like virtually zero risk of the virus using their numbers. And yet, like, there's still people who aren't like waking up like, wait, now they want to vaccinate 5-year-olds? Like, I was talking to my family in France over the holidays, and they were like, dude, they want to vaccinate. And he has a daughter, my cousin I was talking to, and he's like, they want to vaccinate 5-year-olds. He's like, you're going to have to get vaccinated to go to school and go do this and do that. And in New York, right, they were talking about how toddlers and little kids are going to have to show their vaccine passport to go around. I mean, it's like, it's insane. It's like, how much more evidence do you need that this isn't about the virus? It's never been about the fucking virus. And when Peter McCullough talked about the sparse documents, that was awesome.
I was stunned.
Dude, yeah, me too. I was stunned. First of all, Peter McCullough is a black belt. Like, that dude, I remember when he was on my show, he's like, and he didn't know that I start recording immediately when he calls. So I had this on the show. But he's like, we don't need to talk about opinions. He's like, all I do is talk about facts and science and information. And he's like, and that's why nobody can debate me, because he's like, it's none of its opinions. And the fact that the amount of information he knows and the statistics, it's like, how do you listen to that guy talk and then say that, like, that you still believe the nonsense that's coming from the TV? How do you listen to him? He has study after study, example and example. And if you truly care about the greater good, you should be rip shit that there's doctors out there that had protocols that were helping people, and that shit was being suppressed from the media. Okay, because people always talk about, but the numbers, 700,000 people died, 500,000 people, you know, and I'm like, well, that's great, but how many of those people died because the media that you trust suppressed treatments that were working? You know, and then people are like, well, if there was treatments, how come people, doctors didn't say anything? Because the doctors that are saying stuff are they're doing character assassinations on them. They're being suppressed. I mean, there's no reason why. No offense towards my show and any of our shows, but there's no reason why somebody as informed as Dr. Peter McCullough, or somebody who has the history and the resumes of Dr. Malone, needs to go on our shows. Like, they come on our shows because because believe me, it'd be much more beneficial if they were on CNN or they were on now Rogan obviously is a whole nother league. But if they're taking the time to go on all these much smaller shows, it's because they can't go on those shows, because, you know, and that's why I give these guys so much fucking credit, because what they're doing is they're chipping away at the mainstream media, like, one interview at a time, and they'll go on any show. Dr. Peter McCullough, you know, came on to Union of Unwanted the day the Joe Rogan show episode was released. Okay. His Twitter account went from, I think, 50,000 like that day to now I think he's over 200 and something thousand, like in a couple days. You know, it's like insane. And he still came on our show, which doesn't have near like 1% of the poll that Rogan's does, but he still felt the need to. And why? Because he wants to reach as many people as possible. It's not about fame. It's not about, popularity. He's like, you know what? I'm going to use every opportunity I can to get this information out there. And if that means going on smaller shows, larger shows, he's just going to reach them. And you have to appreciate people like that. He doesn't care about the fame. He doesn't care about the popularity. I mean, Rogan asked him like for his website or whatever. He's like, oh, just listen to my show. He's like, he just cares about information. He didn't tell people to follow him on Twitter. He didn't tell people to follow him on Instagram. He doesn't care about any of that, popularity contest bullshit. Like, who cares how many fucking followers you have? Listen to my information. Listen to my show, where I'm going to give you the information and I'm going to directly give you the science and answer your questions, all that stuff. So, and I think at the end of all this shit, people, and this is why I tell people over and over again on my show, I'm like, support shows like Macroaggressions, like all Richard's work and Ickonic, because when shit hits the fucking fan, many of us were disappointed by the cowards who didn't speak up. And you should be appreciative of the people who had the balls to speak up. And you should support, if you can, support alternative media by posting it, sharing it, rating it, reviewing it, financially supporting it if you can. Because we're all so fucking necessary. Because when we're being lied, I mean, think about it. The scariest thing they could put on us is either like, atom bomb's going to be dropped in our country, or there's a virus that's going to kill every loved one you know. And like, so there's people who are petrified, and they needed information, and they needed some understanding what was going on. And when people like us had the balls to speak out and say, you know what, man, like none of this shit's making sense. And, just something here doesn't seem right, when many people wouldn't speak out because they're afraid. I was telling people on my show, I'm like, listen, I have people over my fucking house every single weekend. You think I'm afraid of this shit? I'm like, I love my kids. You think I'll put my kids in danger if I truly believed this was going to harm them? Of course not, and so we, Del Bigtree, James Corbett, Jason Burmis, Ryan from Last American Vagabond. I mean, these guys, their work is priceless. Okay. Our work is, and I say their work because I don't want to, I don't take compliments well, so I don't want to compliment myself. But everybody in this community, like, their work is priceless, because when you're being lied to, and an issue that is so important to understand, and just for psychological reasons, because think about psychologically, how much better off are the people who ran into our shows and are like, oh shit, maybe this is all bullshit. Like, what they're saying makes much more sense than what the TV's saying, compared to the person who had 2 years of saying, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. We're still in a crisis. We're still in a crisis. Those are people who are driving around by themselves with masks on, driving a convertible with a mask on, driving a motorcycle with a mask on.
Don't talk about Rich that way. Come on, stop.
I can't drive. Not legally, but that doesn't stop me driving, to be fair.
Oh, yeah. I love that. That's why not?
But Ricky, think about this. This is the craziest part of this, is that we came into this with good news, the best news. This whole thing is bullshit. You're not going to die. You don't have to act like this. Everything's going to be fine. The media is making a bigger deal out of this. I'm not trying to say nobody's dying, but there's some massive fuckery going on with the numbers, and the testing doesn't work. All this stuff is bullshit. This is great news. And what was the response from people? Stop it. You're a conspiracy theorist. It's like, I came to give you the best news, maybe of your life, definitely of the last 5 years, and you're turning me away. Because you want bad news. You want to be told how bad it is.
Well, people need to know like, we almost need to go back. And that's why I've actually gone back and rewatched, what is it? A New Normal, which is a UK documentary, which you can find on, I think, Odyssey and a couple of the other alternative media video platforms, BitChute. I think it's on there on BitChute or Odyssey, A New Normal. You go back and watch the Plandemic documentary. Go watch because those news clippings and those first reports, like, we need to be reminded of what we were sold initially, because we forget. Like, now it's like, oh, we just want to lower cases. Like, listen, motherfucker, like, that's not what got us a lockdown. They locked us down because they told us millions of people were going to die. We were petrified of anybody getting it. Now it's a fucking joke. If somebody tests positive, like, most of the time, I don't even assume they have symptoms. You know, I don't text message them like, "Hey, I hope you and your family are doing okay." I at all. If I get if somebody tells me a friend of mine has cancer, I'm petrified. What can I do? Can I help? You know, I'm so sorry. No, you know, I have an emotional response to that. If somebody tells me that a friend of mine has COVID, I don't even text them. I don't care. I'm just like, well, that sucks that you got to be locked in your house because of all this bullshit for a while. You know, like, I'm more concerned about them being bored, you know, than they are. Like, it's like, what am I going to do for 11 days? You know, it's like, that's what I'm concerned about. And that's a psychological thing that we don't even consider either. Like, all these people that are just like, oh, I just had a lock. You know, if I have COVID, I'm going to have to quarantine. I'm like, dude, we're social creatures. We aren't supposed to be away from others for that long. Okay. And instead of having 2 years of talking about exercising, nutrition, we know the majority of people have health issues, and many of them are obese. Imagine if we had 2 years of focusing on, hey, people who are overweight, let's, like, if you get COVID, yeah, the vaccine might help, but you know what's really going to help? If you get in better shape, if you exercise, like, there's no talk about that. Just like Peter McCullough said on the Rogan podcast, and it's so true. They wanted to make sure that every road only led to the vaccine, that they didn't want to talk about getting healthier. They didn't want to talk about any other, medicines that might help. They don't want to talk about any of that stuff. And it's like, the people who are still believing this stuff, it's either one, they haven't listened to our shows, which tells you again how important our shows are, that, and every one of us are a part of spreading, you know, at least alternative perspectives on what's going on, but or they've been so traumatized that you can't, like, I truly believe even if the president came out and said, you know what, COVID's behind us, we can move on, there's going to be people who still wear masks because they've been fucking traumatized. Yeah. Traumatized, and this maybe leads to the other thing that we talked about, like, forget the whole family unit, forget genders, forget all this stuff is a social construct. Be afraid to go outside. Now join the metaverse, where you can just, you can just put on a head unit. You can buy NFTs or whatever the hell they're called, and just live in this virtual reality. I mean, Black Mirror. Go back and watch Black Mirror. Like that. When I remember watching Black Mirror, I'm like, oh, that could be like right around the corner. Now I'm like, holy shit! Like, this could really
yesterday.
Right. Yeah, it was yesterday.
I like Rich's movie. So as a good place, you mentioned like remembering what got us into this. That's why, Rich, when you made Prime for Panic Lockdown 2020, that was great, because you rightly recognized that you needed to capture what was currently happening in that moment, and then you did that movie. The interviews were all remote because everyone was remote at that time, and that made it that kind of made it relevant too, because you couldn't do the in-person interviews. Like maybe you did with David or whatever, the people that you worked with on a daily basis. But that movie that you put together, I thought was great because it encapsulated that time, and it really, we didn't know what was going to be a year from then. We only knew what we were being told, and where we had the advantage that a lot of like the normies didn't, is that we knew about this stuff. We knew about the media's role. We knew about Big Pharma's role, and all of these scandals and all of this absurdity and lies and things. We've known about that for decades. So when it actually happened with the COVID situation, we knew it. We recognized it right away. Rich, you started filming. You started saying, "This is what's going on. Let's do." where everyone else was still like, oh my God, we're all going to die tomorrow. We rightly knew that this was bullshit. It was an operation to try and force everyone into this vaccine agenda. So I think I think that your movie should be required viewing for everybody so that they don't forget where these people were trying to take us and the fear tactics that they were using to try, like you said, Ricky, it wasn't like you might get sick. It was everybody's going to die. You're going to be responsible for killing everybody in your family. You've got Sage reporting that, like, you know, the chart was off the chart. It was like millions of people, 50 million dead here. This, and you're just like, oh my God, you hear all these numbers. So we can't allow them to minimize that and go, well, we weren't really saying that. Yes, you were, you fuckers. And it's documented. It's in this movie. Go watch it. Rich, you did a great job of showing, like, boom, 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 boom. This is what they're doing. So
yeah, it's my favorite film I've ever made, to be honest. And the funny thing about that film, one of the most interesting things about that film, and I've got to go in a minute, but I want to finish on this, that film was what has got us banned from the Apple app. So we're not allowed as Ickonic on the Apple app if that film goes back on the website. So I'm like, Jamie, where's the film going on? So he's trying to work on another way to get it on the app, back on the website without the app. And I keep telling him to release it for free on band.video because it's my favorite film. And what I love about that film is it was proper documentary making. In a sense, it wasn't historical. It was in the moment. So I literally was filming on my phone the day we went into lockdown, and I was in a shitty hotel in Derby and laughing about this stuff and going, this is mad. The hotel is like a ghost town, filming out the windows, no one on the streets, walking up and down the streets on my own. Everybody's gone, and it's actually happening. And I'm Zoom calls on the next week with you, Charlie, yourself, isn't it? Loads of people from different countries in it. And it's a real moment. It's what I call documentary filmmaking. It's in the moment. So when we look back at this film in 20 years time, it's actually as it's happening. The news is on them days, and it's like, this is what happened. And you can see me knowing that it's mad, but then you can see other people reacting to it. And it was the real start of it. It was the day we locked down. I started filming it on my phone, and within 2-3 weeks, I'd finished all the interviews because I knew what was happening. And I knew we've got to grab it. The funny thing is when we got chucked, so it's not on Ickonic at the moment because we're not allowed on the Apple app. So we can't have it on that one for misinformation. It's literally documenting what's happened a year and a half, nearly 2 years now, before any of this has happened. So definitely my favorite film because it's proper filmmaking. But what I love, I want to, before I go about the PCR, I'm sorry, about the vaccine, what no one's asking, it's always made me laugh from day one. So you're telling me this vaccine can't stop you getting it and can't stop you passing on. So what's the benefit? The only benefit is that it makes you less, your symptoms will be less. Well, you tell me how many less symptoms I can get than none, because most people are asymptomatic. So unless you're like one louder from, I can't remember that film where he turns up the volume one louder in the mockumentary. What is it called? Spinal Tap. One louder. So you want to get one less than none, do you? Brilliant. So you're less ill than none ill. And also, if we're all individual human beings with all individual symptoms, how can you tell me how ill I might have got unless I live in two virtual realities at the same time? So I live in Richard 1 and Richard 2 lives in this reality and didn't take it. Richard 1 lives in this reality and did take it, then you can compare me. But you can't compare me because you won't know how ill I would have got without or with it, because it's fucking nonsense. So that's not science. That's a belief system. That's religion.
That's
scientism.
Entanglement.
That's quantum bullshit. It's unquantifiable nonsense.
It is.
And it's like saying if you'd have gone down that road, you'd have got hit by that car. But if you'd gone down that road, you wouldn't. Lucky you went down this road. What the fuck are you talking about?
It doesn't.
It's madness.
So many times when people say, "Oh, it would have been much worse if I wasn't vaccinated," I'm like, "How the fuck do you know that?"
Don't know that. No, you don't know. But what you do know is you've got lipid nanoparticles in your arsehole, and then for the next year they'll be there. And the more you keep bunging in it, the more you're going to have. You won't know how ill you would have got. Yes, if you're over 70 and you've got respiratory illnesses and you've got comorbidities that might make you susceptible to it, go ahead and get it. But if you haven't, the likelihood of getting this is tiny amount, even if you know you've got it. When do we have an illness that doesn't make you sick? How can you be sick without being sick? You're sick. Oh, I don't feel sick. Yeah, and you probably never will feel sick, but you've got sick. Someone told you that HIV never made you ill and you'd never know you got it. Would you care if you had HIV or not? You just go, well, all right, okay, that's fine. Or you might pass it on to others. Well, what's my viral load? Oh, we can't tell you anything about viral load because that would give the game away. Oh, so you don't know the viral load of COVID at all then? So what is the viral load? No one asked this question. Tell me what the viral load is to make it to the point where you can pass it on to others, because there has to be a viral load.
Years.
Tell you in 58 years when most people have had the vaccine and we're all sort of cyber robot people. It's madness. You're not telling me about viral load. Why is no one else talking about viral load? If you keep pumping the PCR test up, you're going to find it. But if you told me what the viral load is, you would set the PCR test to say how many cycles you can have and what you need to find it have for it to be to the point where it's a worry. You've got no category here to actually, I mean, I'm not a medical person, but I can understand that there has to be a load that has to be to the point where it's worrying that you can pass it on. If you've got HIV, you can take medicines to stop you passing it on to other people and you can still have children because your viral load has changed. So just because you've got HIV doesn't mean you can't have kids or unprotected sex with a partner. You change your viral load. And if you've got less of a viral load, you're able to have kids and do that. The same would be the purpose with this. If it's a virus, you need to know the viral load to understand how transmissible it is. But they don't talk about viral load because they can't tell you because that would give the game away. So how can you tell me how ill I might not got if you don't even know the viral load that makes me ill? It's just madness. And that's what, and I would like to ask these questions to Dr. McCullen and Malone, was why no one talking about viral load? Why is no one talking about the understanding of what is the viral load to be transmissible? And how can you tell me how ill I might have been if I haven't had it? How can you tell me that? It's an impossible, magical storyland. Like, these are kind of common sense questions, I thought, but you can't tell me how ill I might have been because I don't live in two realities at the same time. It's mad. It's totally mad. It's saying, if you're not married Karen, you might have married Susan and she would have been a lot better. She's got much better boobs. You'd go, I don't know. I never met Susan. I ended up marrying Karen. I'd end up on my own if I second guessed everything I did. It's just like, why is there no, like, and I do think comedy is a great way of pointing out the insanity of these things because it's just absurd. So I've got to go. But I mean, guys, it's been absolutely fantastic chatting to you guys. It's just, guys, can we all just create an island of just away from this fucking place? Because we would all get on all right. Just leave us alone. You can have your transhumanist technocracy cities. We'll go live near the seaside. Fuck off. Give us the Isle of Wight. We'll go live on the Isle of Wight. That'd be fun.
Yeah. Okay. I can live with that.
It's all surrounded by water, so you can defend it from all sides. It's a great strategy.
Yeah. No, I think humor, I mean, I almost do laugh because when, like you said, so much of this makes no sense. And when people say things like, oh, but you're not a doctor, I'm like, listen, I know I need to put gas in a fucking car to make it move. I'm not a mechanic, but that's common sense, right? Like if it's on E and it's not running, it's probably gas. Oh, how can I diagnose a car if I'm not a mechanic, right? I mean, I'm such an idiot. No, it's like, no, this stuff makes like no logical sense. Even the PCR thing, like, there's all these cases. Nobody's talking about how many cycles of PCR test. How do we know they didn't just ramp it up? Everybody's assuming it's a new variant, but how many of these cases could be the old variant? We're not even sure which variant it is. Like, nobody's asking these questions because
this is the point. And what's happened to the old variants? And also, isn't it that if they've taken away one of the three, is it not spike proteins? There's the three, the 3 genes that they have to get? So they've taken away the S gene, so usually has to eat 3 to be a positive, but now they've taken away the S gene. So if you get 2, you've got Omicron, but that used to be a negative, but now it's been redesignated as Omicron because it's only 2. It's like, but that used to be a negative with the other ones, but they only know it's not the other ones because you haven't got all 3. But that doesn't mean that that's this one. That means that it's not them ones. Oh, but it must be this one because you've got a sniffle. You might have the flu. It's just, I mean, I've seen several people say that about the S gene being missing and not hitting all 3 primers. It's primers, by the way. So
stop testing.
Stop testing. Stop fucking doing the test.
I don't. Why even test? I could care less. Like, I don't. I mean, people can come over my house if they have the sniffles. Like, they don't need to get tested. I don't care. Like, share your antibodies. I don't care. I'm like, get us partially sick, because then I'm good to go forever. But
that's it. I've never had a test. I've never had a vaccine. I've had a cold this last week. My little boy's had a cold. My partner's had a cold. It's the winter. So you think
everybody's right now. I mean, my wife's cousin in Florida is super sick. She has all the symptoms of COVID, and she went to get tested multiple times, and it keeps coming up negative. And I'm like, oh my God, there's other sicknesses that get you sick. Oh my God.
So she go there, she's hoping to hit it. It's like, fucking hell, how sick do I have to get before I get it? Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, well, and if you keep testing, I think people were so obsessed with this one virus that people just assume, like, we almost forgot that other people got sick prior to 2020 with other viruses. I mean, the flu is a motherfucker of a cold. I mean, you can get really sick from the flu and be bedridden. So it boggles my mind. I'm hoping 2022 we can finally stop talking about COVID eventually, and then start exposing the facade that is climate change.
Yeah, I just want to talk about fucking the Illuminati bloodlines again. I want to go back to the good old days where we talked about Bohemian Grove.
Me too. I mean, I miss Epstein. I'm not going to lie. I miss the conversation around Epstein. Can we just go back to that?
That conversation's still going, because when talking about a court case, I mean, they're just, I'm like, wait, I don't even understand. Like, why are they showing these pictures? Like, what does this have to do with, I mean, it's just, it's theater, the whole Epstein thing. And I just feel like if some people haven't got red pilled with Epstein and the COVID thing, they're going to be fucking happen forever. Yeah. Just keep taking that Viagra pill.
Thanks, Rich, for coming. I'll talk to you. I'll send you an email this week. I got stuff I want to talk to you about.
All right, yeah, excellent. Yeah, I'm always up for any ideas. And also, guys, we're starting. I say we. I'm not, but Jamie is starting a Ickonic in the US. So
I saw that.
A lot more coming your way with people that he's going to need people like yourself to make that run there. I think it's going to be run out of, I want to say Texas. Is it Texas? Yeah.
It's out of Austin. Yeah. I sent Jamie a message saying, we need to talk.
You do need to talk, and he needs guys like you to push this across. So that's a great move, I think, from him. So yeah. Anyway, I better go, guys, but it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks, guys. Have a great night. Peace.